This week on The Record, will Senator Dick Durbin run for re-election? What he says about his political future. Should schools ban kids from using cell phones in class? A pollster is in studio with surprising new insights into public opinion. A rematch in South St. Louis. The former sheriff's deputy fired after rolling the dice to keep his job. Tony Kirchner, a candidate for alderman, on The Record. It's all coming up right now.
Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Voters in St. Louis will see more than one rematch on their ballot this upcoming election next month. That's because in South City, a hotly contested ward race is also a rematch. Joining us now is the challenger, Tony Kirchner, who ran 2 years ago against the incumbent Alderwoman Ann Schweitzer. She was with us last week. You're here now to give us your response. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Mark. I ran 2 years ago. It was, like you said, a very close race, and one of the things that everyone asked is, win or lose, will you still continue to show up? And that's what I've done the last 2 years, is showing up to neighborhood meetings, reaching out to folks, and helping them whatever ways I can.
Losing's no fun. How long after that did you know you were going to run again?
Well, I took some time pretty much to reflect and think on it. Like you said, it's no fun, but I love our city, and I made that commitment. I knew that we have to do better, and that's why I knew I was going to run again pretty shortly afterwards.
That time, you were a sheriff's deputy. This time, no longer. Many of our viewers may be familiar with the somewhat colorful departure that you made from the department there. How would you describe what happened?
Without kind of getting in too much on it, it's under legal litigation, obviously.
You're suing.
Yes, I can't talk about too much, but I would, briefly touch on it and kind of set the record straight. So my, as you know, I was let go, the famous dice rolling, and I was illegally fired by Alfred Montgomery, the sheriff.
That's the claim you're making in court.
Yes, due to my opponent sending some pictures saying I was campaigning on the job, I believe.
How do you know she sent those?
He showed it to me, and she also said that, yes, she did send them.
Because and she has raised those concerns that she's claimed that you were violating ethical lines by showing up to campaign events in sheriff's garb. Other people have also raised that to our attention beyond her. So I wasn't sure how you knew she was the one that filed the official complaint with your employer.
Yeah, he showed me his phone messages.
And on it you saw?
Yeah.
You saw, what did you see?
He said, your opponent, Ann Schweitzer, my friend, sent me some pictures, and I said, do you mind if I see them? Mm-hmm. And he broke out his phone and kind of showed me some pictures, and this is all a year ago, so, there's a difference. I wasn't
This is not on the recording, this is a separate conversation?
No, this all took place there. So, without going into too much detail, I was like I said, I've continued to go to neighborhood meetings, any type of ward function, and with the full support and encouragement from the sheriff of the city of St. Louis, Vernon Betts at the time. This is off the clock. This is on my time. And we were all encouraged to show up to neighborhood meetings and talk on sheriff duties,
right,
sheriff functions.
So you seem to suggest or acknowledge in that exchange with Alfred Montgomery, the recording that we all heard, that it would be inappropriate for a candidate for office to wear public official garb at a campaign event. You've acknowledged that much.
Repeat that question for me. So
it appeared in the recording, in your conversation with Alfred Montgomery, that you did agree it would be inappropriate to wear sheriff's badges or uniforms while campaigning.
Absolutely. If you were campaigning, if you were using a status to campaign, absolutely. But like in that...
And you maintain that you weren't doing that.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Why not?
Why not?
What measures would you take to avoid doing that?
So I had not filed, number one, for office. I never spoke about running for office.
You just told us that you agreed to run almost immediately after losing, so you knew you were running.
In the future, yes, I knew I would run, but you avoid any questions on, hey, I'm running for office or anything. I'm speaking on behalf of the St. Louis City Sheriff's Department on questions on, evictions, restraining orders, and CIT, that type of duties, with the full, encouragement from the sheriff speaking at these meetings. There's never no political talk.
What would be the biggest distinction, do you think, between you and Alderwoman Ann Schweitzer? I think by all accounts, she is fairly active and involved in just running complaints up to flagpoles. Somebody complains about a broken tree branch or a pothole here or there, and she's pretty visible and vocal in trying to get it fixed pretty quickly. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and given to that credit, I appreciate Alderman Schweitzer's showing up to the meetings like I do, but a lot of people that have reached out to me kind of have a different view. Telling, if you have a complaint and I say call CSB running up the flagpole, that's not really running up the flagpole, is it now? A lot of people have sent years, 6 or 8 months of kind of emails and threads going back to where it was a simple thing as a squatter living next door to them. And she said there's nothing really that could be done. And this is kind of, a synopsis over all of them that make a complaint. St. Louis City Police can't do anything. You have to file an eviction,
You'd be more aggressive.
There you go.
All right, he's Tony Kirchner, running for alderman in the South City's 1st Ward. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you.
That full conversation up on KSDK.com right now, where you can watch it for free on the 5 Plus app. Also, the full interview with incumbent Alderwoman Ann Schweitzer, also online. Plus, stay tuned for an expanded version of this episode tomorrow on 5 Plus. We're right back in just a moment. One question sure to dominate Illinois politics over the next several weeks is Senator Dick Durbin running for re-election. He stopped at East St. Louis Thursday, and with that 2026 primary campaign season right around the corner, the 80-year-old Democrat is facing questions about his future.
We have a deep bench in the Democratic Party.
Are you going to be a part of the next election cycle, or can someone in your position kind of leave it all out in the field and let someone else run on it?
I'm not making any announcement on that today, but I will soon.
A lot of Democrats, top Illinois Democrats who might want a job like yours, are deferring to your decision.
Yes, they are, and I thank them for that. They've said that to me privately and publicly. I'll make my decision soon.
But is that a healthy posture? Republicans aren't afraid to primary each other. And
Listen, I appreciate their friendship and respect, and I'm not going to tell you otherwise.
how does that knowledge of the deep bench and the younger generation of talent influence your decision? Do you feel that pressure?
Pressure? No, I don't feel any pressure. I'm going to make my decision, the best decision for me, my family, and our state.
Can you define soon?
Let's leave it at that.
And he did leave it at that. Just an hour sooner and a few towns over, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski described the impact of proposed cuts to Medicaid.
Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid expansion, we have seen almost 1 million additional Illinoisans enroll in Medicaid because of that federal aid. Cutting that crucial federal assistance threatens the care of all of those 1 million people that were able to be added to coverage. Additionally, it threatens care provided by community health centers, which serve our most vulnerable communities, as we know.
Some quick numbers for you. 3.4 million Illinoisans, almost 1 in 4, rely on Medicaid. It pays for about half of all childbirths in the state, 2/3 of nursing home coverage. This week, federal prosecutors charged the husband of former Congresswoman Cori Bush on 2 federal counts of wire fraud. According to court documents, Courtney Merritt's filed fraudulent applications seeking pandemic funds, one with the Small Business Administration in 2020, another in 2021 under the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Combined, the Department of Justice says those applications allowed him to collect more than $20 grand in pandemic cash. U.S. Attorney and former Missouri Republican Party Chair Ed Martin was the one to announce the indictment. This last Tuesday, we hosted the only televised mayoral debate inside the city limits of St. Louis. Incumbent Mayor Tashara Jones defended her record as challenger Alderwoman Kara Spencer called for changes in City Hall. There's a look back at the debate stage alongside Alvin Reed. Some of the moments got kind of heated, like this one on the exchange about deaths inside the City Justice Center.
We have made significant strides in taking care of our detainees over the past 4 years, but I think people need to remember that a lot of these issues predate my administration. But when it got to my desk, we made the necessary changes to make those changes to make sure that our people are healthier and we're moving forward.
That's absolutely not true. The deaths spiked under your leadership, Mayor, and when it became apparent that we had a problem with the leadership in the Justice Center, you failed to take action. The Board of Aldermen, the public, we were calling for action, and you sat on it and you sat on it and you sat on it. And you failed. You did not take action. We sat there and we had the same director for years, and the spikes, the deaths were spiking.
We appreciate the distinction here.
May I respond?
10 seconds.
Ms. Spencer also fails to recognize that the CJC commissioner has civil service protection. So we have to make sure that we are following every protection for our civil service employees before we just fire someone and leave someone open for a lawsuit.
There's a lot there. If you missed that debate Tuesday night, all 58 minutes of it is also up online right now, where you can watch it for free on the 5+ streaming app. Just download that on your Apple, Roku, or Fire TV. If you're looking for it, search KSDK in that app store. We're going to break down some recent polling about public opinion with the director at SLU and YouGov right after the break. Welcome back. Let's nerd out a bit. We've got some new poll numbers in from SLU and YouGov, and alongside us is the political science professor Steve Rogers. Good to have you with us. We always love to dig into these numbers with the SLU YouGov poll. Let's start with this. A lot of people in the public are just skeptical of polling in general. How do you tell people you can trust what's in a poll? How do you win those skeptical viewers over before we dig into what's in here?
No, sure. That's a great question, Mark. And so then here, one thing that people what they should do when they're probably evaluating poll data is see what the pollster is doing in terms of maybe their transparency, or say I'm a political science professor, do they show their work?
And you guys do. There's 90+ pages of all this.
Oh yeah, so there's 90+ pages. So that's just say the top line results. But additionally, if any of your viewers, for example, want to go and download the data themselves, you can right now go to slu.edu/poll, download all the raw data, all the crosstabs, and so we try to be as transparent as possible, because here we do want to be a trusted source of public opinion for the state of Missouri.
And with all the other caveats and disclaimers that go along with it, it's a snapshot in time, not a prediction of anything. We're measuring a certain sample size. There's margins of error.
Exactly.
Okay, we've said all that stuff.
Great.
Let's get into some of the politics here. A lot of our viewers have been watching this issue of a state takeover of the city of St. Louis Police Department. In your poll, it was interesting. That idea was 8 points underwater. Statewide, this is not a city of St. Louis poll, but in a deep red state of Missouri, only 39% of people said that was very popular. I think we have those numbers we can show you. 47% of people said in the city of St. Louis, they did not like the idea. Is it 43 there?
So here, I think what we have up on the screen, so just to kind of go through the numbers a little bit. So here what we did is that we polled on whether or not there should be state control of, say, the St. Louis City Police Department.
Yeah, I think I misspoke. It's 43, not 40.
And so then here what we found is that in terms of state control, only 39% of Missouri likely voters thought there should be state control of Missouri's police department. Meanwhile, 47% of Missouri likely voters thought that there should be local control.
This was interesting though, because we're not going to show you this graphic, but in Kansas City it was even more unpopular, 13 points underwater. And I liked what you did here. I'm going to ask you about this methodology. You then asked the people, okay, take the city off of it. What about if it was just your local department? Do you want the state control doing it? 22% said yes, 68% said no. That was 46% or 46 points underwater in terms of popularity. So local control as the concept, if it's about me and my neighborhood,
Exactly.
I prefer it. Don't bring that state board here.
No, you're
But if it's in that St. Louis, well, changes the dynamics.
Well, it changes the dynamics, but still, a plurality of individuals, as you said earlier, an 8% margin want local control for St. Louis, a 13% margin wants it for Kansas City. And so then these are the only two cities kind of in the country that are under state control of their police departments. So this is something that goes back all the way to the Civil War. But in this, what this poll suggests is that perhaps, at least in this public safety bill that was passed a couple of weeks ago by the legislature, Missourians may not be all on board with all parts of it.
Okay, so if I'm a conservative Republican living in Rolla, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, hold on a minute. You know, I've seen this poll before, and sometimes you guys underrepresent Republican ideas. You got some other approval ratings for Republicans here. I look at the governor. He's 19 points in the positive territory. 50% of people approve of Mike Kehoe, only 31 disapprove. That's a plus 19 favorability rating. What does that tell you? That's about in line with his margin of victory in November.
No, yeah. And so then in this, one thing that we do in every poll is we do ask voters, do they approve or disapprove of different political actors in the state? And so Mike Kehoe, as you said, is about 19 points above water, or the approval minus the disapproval. And then additionally, while voters may have been a little bit more sour on, say, state control, there were many initiatives by Mike Kehoe in his campaign that voters are more behind.
So you can kind of see that he's capturing the sentiment of, say, for example, requiring police to report the immigration status of people arrested with crimes. That polled very high in your poll.
You're exactly right. And so one thing that we polled on was whether or not, say, law enforcement officers needed to report to the Department of Public Safety the citizenship status of criminals. And then there, 68% favored that, and only 18% opposed.
And if you're watching at home, you see all those numbers on your screen. You add the positives together, subtract by the negatives, you get your overall number if you're doing the math there. Josh Hawley here, plus 10. What's the history with the polling about Josh Hawley's favorability? Do you have that?
No, yeah. And so then here, Josh Hawley, again, is polled at, say, above 50%, and so he's a 10% kind of above water. Admittedly, this is about 2% lower than he polled about 6 months ago, but that's well within the margin of error. So Josh Hawley has repeatedly actually been the most popular political figure within our poll. And so then in this, Hawley is probably one of the more popular political figures kind of at this state level.
I want to get into this other issue because this is one of these issues that I just sort of cropped up out of nowhere, if I can say that. The question, do you favor schools banning students from accessing their cell phones during class? And you go through and measure that for a number of different grades, but the one we had there on your screen, 70% were in favor, 22% opposed, and that was in high school. If you get younger, the support is even higher. This looks like a political winner. Why did you choose to poll this question?
No, so we polled on this question for multiple reasons. First, like one of the goals of this LegalGov poll is to help inform the public and policymakers of what voters think about these policies. And so then last session, there was a bill trying to ban cell phones. This session, there's multiple bills, one by Representative Gregg, also trying to restrict or more specifically have school districts institute policies.
And states across the country are doing this.
No, exactly.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker was talking about it on national TV the other day. It's like this issue's just sort of cropped up, and for reasons that you're describing here. But every parent has a kid at school, and they want to know what are they paying attention to when they're at class.
No, yeah, and so this is actually part of a broader concern that we kind of identified in the LegalGov poll. So one thing that we did is we asked about just technologies in general. And so specifically we asked, do you believe the following advances in technology have had more positive or negative effects on society? And then here, for example, we found that only 52% of voters kind of thought smartphones had a positive effect. But then if we kind of go to social media, this plummets even more, where 62% of voters kind of say it has a negative effect upon society.
That's like one of the dirtiest buzzwords out there right now, social media. Okay, in the last 30 seconds we have here, were there any big, there's a lot more, go read the whole poll, right? But were there any things in it that really surprised you?
And so then here, one thing that probably did surprise me a little bit is that we probably heard this last week about the Department of Education closing, or Donald Trump attempting to reduce it. And actually 52% of Missouri likely voters, so this is a pretty Republican state, actually opposed closing the department, or eliminating the Department of Education.
He's Steve Rogers with SLU, political science professor. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me, Mark.
We're back in a moment. Remember the presidential campaign of 2024? Seems like forever ago. Man, that was a wild one. A lot happened. But listen, when candidates tell you something on the campaign trail, it's our job to hold them to it. So let's check the record.
Like some on the right, severe right, came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have, they're sort of the opposite of the radical left, okay? You have the radical left and you have the radical right, and they come up with this, I don't know what the hell it is, it's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme, but I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
Well, now we're 62 days into this second Trump administration, and more than half of the president's executive orders take wrecking balls to federal agencies that were listed in the pages of Project 2025. Take page 319, for example. The Federal Department of Education should be eliminated, it says. This Thursday, President Trump signing an executive order aiming to do just that. Page 400, 2022 of Project 2025, reduce the number of full-time positions and eliminate programs. Last week, President Trump just does that at the EPA. Page 253, move USAID under the State Department. Trump did that, along with bashing much of that other agency, reducing its spending. Page 258, you see page 846 on your screen there. Target the bipartisan tradition of a 3-2 split on the Federal Communications Commission and seize it, replace it under partisan control. Trump did fire Democrats on the FCC. I could go on, but you see the trend here. If Donald Trump didn't know about Project 2025's playbook 9 months ago, well, he's running it effectively now. So effectively to the point where its former director, Paul Dan, said the way the White House is putting his designs into motion is, quote, beyond his wildest dreams. You see here on screen about dismantling the Department of Homeland Security. There's also work to impose work benefits for parents on Medicaid, a whole lot more in there. Eliminate Head Start, eliminate the Housing Supply Fund. All these plans are right there in the pages of Project 2025, where you can read them. Gutting the Department of Labor's civil rights protections, removing protections that would guard against discrimination from the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. Look, there's a lot in there. And if Donald Trump ran on these promises, he could go to you and say, promises made, promises kept. Well, if the courts allow these things to actually happen, that is. But a lot of that is still under review. He didn't run on these things, though. He ran away from them. That much is clear when we check the record. Until next week, we're off the record. See you then.